But much more serious than that for Albanese and the country was this today. The catastrophic collapse of Whyalla steelworks in South Australia, the one we were told would be saved by green energy, which Albanese's Energy Minister Chris Bowen then promptly gave millions to. Well, today put into administration by the South Australian Premier after failing to pay around $300 million of bills.
Give the state rights to be able to enter the steelworks to perform functions such as basic inspections. The second is to get definitively the right to have access to the accounts of the operator of the steelworks. And the third is to provide the South Australian government a first charge over debts that are owed to the South Australian government.
Now, this disaster finally has to tell every Australian that Labor's climate schemes are ruining this country, as I've tried to warn for months, years, and they must be scrapped now. This collapse is utter humiliation for Malinowskis and also for Chris Bowen, who's almost deranged by his global warming obsession. You have got to ask how much of our money have these climate dupes wasted? Have they cost us by believing a huckster's claim that some miracle gas, green hydrogen, is going to save these steelworks which prop up Whyalla? And, you know, it's 3,000 jobs, the 3,000 jobs of these steelworks. 14 years ago, Tony Abbott, as the federal opposition leader, did warn that Labor's climate crusade was going to jack up the price of electricity and wipe out Whyalla. He was mocked then by Labor and the warmest media, which then in 2017 hailed British steel magnate Sanjeev Gupta. He's the city's saviour because he was going to buy these steelworks out of administration and promise to make it one of the biggest steelworks in the world by powering it with green hydrogen, which is made by pumping massive amounts of wind and solar power through water.
British industrialist and owner of Whyalla Steelworks, Sanjeev Gupta, has big ambitions to use hydrogen instead, to make what's known as green steel.
For us, this is our one best hope for the immediate future.
Now, you know the trick now. I mean, as soon as you mention green energy, especially green hydrogen, you can play Chris Bowen like a fiddle. I mean, he and Anthony Albanese as well, they actually think green hydrogen will be our salvation, our future as a clean energy superpower.
Our green hydrogen future is fundamental to that clean energy future.
Now, these guys seem not to know or care that green hydrogen is ridiculously expensive and has not been proven to work at scale anywhere, which is why a lot of investors here are now walking away from it, even Andrew Forrest. You know, it was green. You know, that's enough for Chris Bowen. It's enough for Peter Malinowskis. What more do you want? Green power. So Bowen handed, but get this, Bowen handed Gupta Steelworks $63 million of your money for a low-carbon electric arc furnace. He gave that massive handout, even though Gupta was already known to be in huge trouble, was known to shift money from one part of his failing business to another.
I'm also announcing today another allocation out of the fund of $63 million for BlueScope's friends at Liberty Steel in Whyalla. That'll be used for the establishment of electric.
Kiss it goodbye. Bowen's money is most likely now gone. Your money. And what's more, Bowen and Malinowskis, can you believe these guys? They were so sure that green hydrogen would now be needed around Whyalla for these steelworks, so they also promised $100 million to help build Australia's first large-scale export terminal for hydrogen at nearby Point Benithan. And Malinowskis even talked of plans for a hydrogen power plant for Whyalla worth nearly $600 million. I mean, these guys are incredible. And even today, even after this disaster, the Premier will say, oh, well, that plant still could happen one day, although maybe not yet.
We absolutely believe as a government that hydrogen will have a role to play in the decarbonisation of steel in the future. I mean, it is the way to do it. I mean, we can question timing and when that might occur, but at some point it will be part of the future, and we'll have more to say about what we're doing with our own plans tomorrow.
What a joke. I mean, Gupta must have seen this come-in spinner at Christmas. How gullible can you be? What Australia's smelters and our heavy industry are actually screaming for is cheaper 24/7 electricity. You don't need the grants, you don't need all that. Don't need green hydrogen, you can't use green. Just cheaper electricity. Instead, they've got this unreliable wind and solar power that's given South Australia some of the world's highest electricity prices. And now, this Gupta, he can't pay his bills to suppliers around Whyalla, right? He's a man, though, who is meanwhile renovating his $34 million waterside mansion in Sydney. He must be laughing at how easy it was to get all these promises and all this cash from Bowen and Malinauskas. Well, today at least the Premier ran out of patience, saw the jig was up. He put the steelworks into administration, rushed through a law, allowing the government to go through its books. He also promised a package to keep the steelworks in business under different owners. And Malinauskas even claimed today, despite all that, Gupta hadn't actually been wrong about the plant, just bad at execution.
Mr. Gupta's vision is, largely the right one. It just hasn't been allowed to come to life.
Let me translate all this for you, what you just heard. To keep it going, to cover up the mistake, to whatever, taxpayers are going to get belted yet again and again. And that's not all. That's not all. Port Bernardine's hydrogen dream, that's almost certainly doomed as well. And that money gone, a portion of it. A broke steelworks simply cannot afford green hydrogen. And Malinauskas has already admitted that no green hydrogen at the steelworks probably means no hydrogen plant at Port Bernardine either. But did anyone see Energy Minister Chris Bowen today? I mean, normally, give him a camera, he'll film himself if he has to. Gone missing today, now that another of his green schemes, particularly another of his green hydrogen schemes, has hit the wall. I guess he's in some basement where he's just been posting how the opposition's plans for nuclear power, which at least is reliable power, Chris, isn't thought through, he says, isn't thought through. But I tell you what, Bowen is the last person to judge what's thought through or not, with his hydrogen plans collapsing all over the country. And I tell you, smelters everywhere would be desperate for a nuclear power station now to guarantee them electricity. Bowen, Malinauskas, how can the country be run like this on wild green dreams? And if we don't wake up to these guys and others like them, this Whyalla wipeout will not be the last. Oh, one last thing. This is such a rolled gold disaster that the Prime Minister will fly to Whyalla tomorrow to tell the workers something reassuring, if you can think of something. I've got a plan for him. You know what you should say, Prime Minister? Chris Bowen is sacked.